So, we have the pleasure of welcoming Gordon today to our interview series. I'm Aishwarya Jain from the peopleHum team. Before we begin, just a quick intro of peopleHum. peopleHum is an end-to-end, one-view integrated human capital management automation platform, the winner of the 2019 Global Cody Award for HCM that is specifically built for crafted employee experiences and the future of work with AI and automation technologies. We run the peopleHum blog and video channel, which receives upwards of 200,000 visitors a year and publish around 2 interviews with well-known names globally every month. But now for our guest, Gordon. Gordon is a leading inspirational speaker, helping a multitude of organizations for operational cost saving. He is the most sought after leader to turn around failing departments of multinational organizations and is the author of the book Fast, which was a finalist for the Management Book of the Year 2017. He is also the founder and CEO of Leadership Principles Limited, a leader who is passionate to learn more, an internationally acclaimed keynote speaker, and a contributing author at leading websites like Forbes, Fortune, and Business Insider. We are delighted to welcome Gordon Tredgold to our interview. Welcome, Gordon. We're thrilled to have you.
Thank you, and I'm thrilled to be on the show as well. Thank
you so much. So the first question I had for you, Gordon, was tell us something about the interesting work that you're carrying out at Leadership Principles.
So I do coaching, consulting, and speaking. And unfortunately, with the coronavirus, I was due to be speaking in India in April at People Matters in Bangalore, Mumbai, and Delhi. But due to the travel restrictions, a lot of those conferences are rescheduling. For later in the year, and I was due to speak at a number of HR conferences. So I speak at those events, and what I look to do is, my passion is looking to give people the tools to become better leaders, to show them how to create engaged teams, motivated teams, create culture, and deliver results. And having worked in that turnaround arena for the past 25 years, when I first started, I was doing a lot of small turnarounds. So for that, it was much more about my own personal capabilities to be able to turn things around. I was very hands-on. But as you develop and go up, I was leading teams, then I was leading. And it's at that point, once you get 2 to 3 levels back, when it becomes less about your technical capability, and now it's all about your ability to lead, mobilize, motivate. And over 20 years, I've really focused on trying to understand that, simplify it. And what I do now is through the speaking and writing and coaching, is I look to share simple techniques to empower people to be better leaders.
I see. And what do you believe are the primary focus areas in building high-performance teams?
So, I've written about 1,200 articles on around leadership, motivation, team building, engagement, delivering results, delivering success. But I think one of the things that we need to do to build a high-performance team, what we have to do is we have to create an environment in which people can be successful. A lot of time when people tell me, oh, the performance is terrible, I need to get rid of my team. And then I will say, well, what are the things that are causing the problems? I'll say, oh, my team's terrible. Okay, and more often than not, what I find is that the team have not been told what they need to do. They haven't been told what the goal or objective is. So not only do they know not what to do, they don't have clarity over what success looks like. They haven't been given the tools to do it. They might not even have the skills to do it, or they might not have the time to do it. And sometimes it can be because they just don't want to do it. But in terms of percentages, that last one is less than 5%. So the fact that they don't know what to do, they don't know how to do it, they don't have the tools or the time or the skills, this is not the problem of the team. This is the problem of the manager. So to create high-performing teams, we have got to put our teams in a position where they can be successful. And four simple things that we can do: we can give clear direction, be very specific about what success looks like. We can give our teams the space to be successful. Don't micromanage them. We've chosen them for a reason. Let's trust them to do the job. And then let's ask them, do you have everything you need to be successful? And when they say yes, they've accepted ownership because they now know they can do it. And then the other two things we need to give, or the last thing we need to give, is if it's going well, give them recognition. If it's not going well, ask them what they need and give them that support. So if we give clear direction, give them space, give them the tools they need, and then give them recognition when they do a good job, if you just do those four simple things, your team will start to perform better. And if you do that consistently, you'll create a culture of high performance. People want to be successful. Nobody wants to be on a failing project. So once you put them in a position to succeed, in my experience, 99% of the people will choose the option of succeeding.
I see. And if they do really good work and you want to recognize them, then what is the time frame of recognizing? Because probably if you recognize them a bit too much, it might get to their head, or they would start underperforming. So
how many times would I have to tell you you're beautiful before you got sick of hearing it?
That's a good one.
Yeah. So I've worked with teams where we've increased performance by 50 to 500%. And in some cases, our performance was rock bottom. I worked with one team where we were trying to achieve our service levels, and our achievement of service level was 0%. And as we started to go through that turnaround, once the team started providing accurate reports that showed we were at 0%, I gave them positive feedback. Good job on producing the reports. They're accurate, they're honest, we're just not doing a great job. And then as it starts to improve, then you start to give them positive feedback for the improvements. And then when it's been met for 3 months in a row, you give them feedback. You're not giving them feedback for it's a nice, accurate report. We've moved on. So we have to keep raising the bar for what we want them to achieve in order to motivate them to keep becoming higher and higher performing.
Got it.
And we have to start right at the beginning. And one of my key talking points is that we start recognizing people before they are successful. We recognize them for the effort. And a lot of people tell me we shouldn't do that. And then I ask them, do you have any children? And when they say yes, I ask them, what did you do when your child 2 steps and then dropped onto its bottom? And they said, we cheered. Really? Didn't walk, didn't run 100 meters, didn't run a marathon. And then they tell you, yeah, but I wanted to encourage it to take a few more steps and then a few more. Because if I encourage it at the start, it will start to walk and run quicker. Yeah, completely agree. Now apply the exact same principle to your team. But after 3 months, you're not praising them for 2 steps and falling. You're now praising them for walking, running, sprinting.
It's a gradual step process.
Yeah, you don't go from poor to brilliant overnight. It takes time. And if you go from poor to brilliant overnight, then how sustainable is that? If you increase that quickly, you can easily drop back. And what we want to do is we want to make it part of the culture. We want to embed these improvements and
pushing them little by little for them to
be
addicted to their success.
Correct. And we want them to repeat the effort until they're successful. And then we celebrate the successes. If somebody does a good job now, go and give them praise, public recognition, immediate, sincere, and authentic, and enthusiastic. go and do that.
That's wonderful advice. I think that would really help in creating successful teams.
I was brought in, I was the 5th project manager to take over a project that had been having difficulty. And we managed to deliver it by, and again, taking that approach of give people clear direction, tell them what you expect, give them the space to get on with it, ask them, do they have the tools they need? And if they don't, give them to them, and then start to praise them. And we delivered that project. We turned it around in 3.5 months. People want to be part of a successful organization. They want to work for a leader that makes them successful. Nobody wants to work on a failing project or a poor performing department.
And talking about the future, right? How do you believe the workplace is going to evolve in the future, and organizations need to focus on what is being termed as the future of work?
So interestingly, I've worked in IT for 30 years, and the project I just talked about that I worked on at Fujitsu, that is I've worked, at the start of my career, I managed a team who were in the same office as I was, and then I managed bigger teams that were on the same floor of the same building, and then multiple buildings, and then teams were offshore or they were with a supplier. So my career, as it's grown, it has constantly changed to a different organization. But this was the first time I've ever worked on a project where 100% of the people, I didn't meet them, all completely virtual. I worked from home, and I had a team in India, in Pune, and I only met one person. That was when I spoke at an event in Pune. And it was nothing to do with the project. I was in his hometown, so we went for dinner. But I had teams in Russia, UK, Switzerland, Germany, and I was actually based in Belgium. And when you're working in an environment with a 100% virtual team, we've got to have state-of-the-art collaboration tools. We've got to have tools that allow people to be connected, and things like we tend to use Skype for Business, and that allows us to do Skype chat either during a meeting, so we can have a side conversation while a meeting's going on. You've got to have the video conferencing tools, like we are on Zoom, that allow us to have meetings. We've got to have all of their tools so that they can work on their device. Because when we do that, we've given people the tools they need to be involved and to participate. Then what we need is leaders who understand how to engage, motivate, and lead people in a virtual environment. And one of the things that requires is significantly more communication, because you're not going to be able to see me sat in my office working, or try and take some cues from me from what I'm doing in the office. You can't see me. So we need to make ourselves, one of the key management terms or approaches is called managing by walking around.
Right.
An excellent management tool. But how do you do that if you're in a virtual environment? It's a great tool, but it now no longer exists because we're not in the same location. So we now have to have leaders who understand how to do virtual managing by walking around, who set up more meetings. And we've got to be better at communicating, because it's not just verbal, it's also through chat, and email's still a big part. But, I've seen the decline of email over the last 5 years. So we've got to find a way to be able to, make that connection, make people feel involved, connected, in order to drive their commitment. And I don't think it's a different leadership style. It's that the things that make a good leader, you could not having all of everybody in front of you. But now it's virtual. Those interpersonal skills that allow you to make connections and keep people engaged. As off the all, you're 6,000 miles off. So how do I maintain your involvement in the project? The personal skills are.
Right.
Does that answer your question? And the other thing about collaboration tools is, shared document management systems. I work with a project. We use SharePoint, but SharePoint is, we're working with multiple customers, and we have to have multiple SharePoints because not everybody can access all the SharePoints, which is a sharing of documentation disaster. You need to have a common area where we can all share documents, see documents, a shared documentation repository, shared work area. And the better that is, the more seamless the working will be between people.
Yeah, and as I see it, it's kind of like a pyramid with the tools and tech stack and the process and then the people part of it, right?
Yep.
I think if you have the right tools for it, you can follow, you can, look at the process and then the people.
Yeah, absolutely. And, there's tools now where the two of us can be, Google Docs that can be editing the same document at the same time. We can't do that on the version of SharePoint we use, do that. So that we need to be at the bleeding edge of collaboration. Because the more we collaborate, 1 + 1 = 3 when you get great collaboration. But if we don't have the right tools, we're just going to be stuck with 1 + 1 = 2, maybe even 1.5.
Yeah, I think the Peter Drucker management days are over. You have to accommodate yourself with tools, tech, and have the right ideas. Although the set of values that a leader has not changed, I think, from the past.
No, I completely agree with you. What made Alexander a great leader is just as valid today as it ever was. I think the challenge is that some of the poor leaders could get away with it in environments where you were seeing people all day, every day. Now there's a bigger distance between us and the people, and you've got to be able to close that gap.
Right.
You've got to be more inspiring. You've got to be more emotional. You've got to be more engaging. I have a tendency to, I think it's the tendency now to try to over-communicate. And it would definitely be over-communication, what I would consider to be over-communication if we were in a same physical location, but the fact that we're often thousands of miles away on different time zones, I think it's more difficult to over-communicate now. Under-communicating, dead easy. Over-communicating, not so much.
Right.
And I think as well, the other thing that we need to look at, before we started this video, we had 5 or 10 minute chat, and we've got to find the time for that social aspect of it, that, chat by the coffee machine, the water cooler. Those are not possible when we're not in the same location. So we've got to find a way to make ourselves accessible, which isn't always in a formal meeting.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And that's more difficult. In a non-physical setting, because we on the project that I just worked on, we had no video conferencing. It was all audio conferencing, and so it's like now I'm watching you nod your head. I can't see that on audio conference, and I don't know what the percentage is, but I think it's 87% of communication is non-verbal. So how are we going to pick that up, the body language and everything, when we're not in the same physical location? So these are the skills that we need to work on and develop.
Right. And I think as we move into the future, there will be millennials. It'll be all about millennials. And,
it's all about millennials now.
Yeah, it's about informal meetings. They don't like rules. They don't want to be in silos.
See, I disagree with that. Are you a millennial?
I am.
I'm a baby boomer.
Yes.
I don't like being in silos. I don't like formality. I don't like structure. The problem is, as we get older, we get beaten down to, it's just conform. And by the time we conform, we've forgotten that we were rebels, and then we complain about all of the young rebels that are coming, that are not as beaten down as we are. So what I find with the leadership is, good leadership works with everybody. If you give people clear direction, give them space, give them the tools, give them the praise, that works with everybody. And you don't have to worry about millennials. I think the challenge that people face with millennials is that millennials, in my opinion, are much less tolerant of poor leadership. They will tend to call it out more now. Whereas before, we might have been a little bit, my generation might have been a little bit quieter about criticising the manager. So they tend to call it out or let you know that they're not happy about it, which is great. But I led a team in Germany where the average age of the team was 40. The average tenure in the company was 15 to 20 years. And at the same time, I had a team in Kuala Lumpur, and the average age was 24. And I had a team in India where the average age was around 25, 26. And that same leadership style worked with all of them because you're putting them in a position to be successful. And everybody appreciates that, no matter how young or how old they are. Good leadership is good leadership. Bad leadership, millennials are less tolerant of it. So Don't be a bad leader. And do not blame millennials for you being a bad leader. that is not. That is. And I see that a lot. People, complaining about millennials, and it's like, are you sure it's not you're just a bad leader?
Yeah, that's interesting. And, I was talking to Deborah the other day, and she was telling me the same thing. It's millennials, you have to be inclusive of them. You have to work.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things I always talk about with, people tell me, oh, have you seen the statistics for employee engagement? In the US, it's 33%, and worldwide, it's 15%. And then I ask the question, have you seen the statistics for management engagement?
Yeah.
And the management engagement is 30%, and employee engagement is 33%. So which came first, management disengagement or employee disengagement? It's impossible, or nearly impossible, for an engaged employee to remain engaged if their manager is disengaged. How does that work? It's management's job to engage people, and if they're not engaged, engagement's not going to happen. So stop blaming your team for being disengaged. Be engaged, and then engage your team. That's our job, to engage them. It's not their job to be engaged.
Right. And there's a lot of hype around, the gig economy and what's the future going to be like with gig economy. So how do you engage the gig workers?
So I have the exact I'm actually now I've worked as a freelancer for many years and as a full-time employee. So I've been part of that gig economy, and it's like now I'm working on Fujitsu and I'm a freelancer, but they treat me as if I'm one of their own employees. When we go to meetings, you don't know who's a contractor, who's an employee, who's a supplier, who's the customer, and I think we have to take that approach of you cannot just assume just because somebody's independent, a gig worker, that they are going to be independently engaged. If they're part of your team, you have to engage them. It's our job to go and do that. And people talk to me about, well, how do you get them to take accountability? And leadership defines culture. Leadership defines attitude. And the people that you lead might not be part of your company, but if they're in your expanded team, they're still going to pick up your attitude, your culture. So if you focus on being accountable, engaged, engaging, then they will respond likewise. And I think I think leadership is going to become a much more important skill, because if you just focused on managing people, and I think management's important, you got leadership is one side of the coin, management is the other. If you just focused on management and you're just going to assume that everybody's engaged, you're not going to create a high performing team. You're going to end up with a team that will do just enough. So leadership is going to become much more critical as we go forward. And people who've got that empathy, emotional intelligence, that ability to communicate, engage, and motivate at a distance are going to become much more valuable and successful. That differential between good and bad leadership is going to become higher.
Right. And how important is it, as a leader, to give critical feedback, and how often should one give critical feedback?
So I hate critical feedback. I think we should ban critical feedback.
Really?
Yes. And just think of it as feedback. But even better is to think about feed forward. It's like I can see you're wearing a green top. If I didn't think that was a good colour for you, I could say to you, oh, by the way, I don't think green's a good colour for you. That's feedback. Or what I could say is, you know what? I always think when you wear blue, it really looks amazing. So, give people feed forward. Give them things that they can do. Tell them how to be better. Tell them what they could do to improve performance. Whereas when we give feedback, it's backward looking. It has a negative connotation. So think about feed forward. It has to be supportive. If it doesn't give people guidance on how to be better, then you're just being negative. You're just being critical. And criticism is not an engaging or motivating factor. Coaching is motivating. Encouragement is motivating. Empowering is motivating. So we've got to be thinking, feed forward. This is what we can do to make it better next time. And we have to do that, whenever we have an opportunity to do that, we should take that opportunity to do it. And it has to be done from a position. For me, feedback has to be, or feed forward, has to be one of two things. It has to be praise or supportive. Mm-hmm. If it's neither of those two, then just keep it to yourself, because the employee is not going to benefit. And when we're giving feed forward, it's always about benefiting the employee so that they can benefit the team and the company in the short and long term.
Right. So
it's only a small change of words, but when you're thinking feed forward, now you're now in a positive mindset, and that positive mindset will become contagious. If you're thinking feedback and you have any negativity, people are going to sense and pick that up. So just a small change of word, feed forward, has a huge impact on how you give it, how you prepare, and how it's received.
So as leaders, we should be more mindful and make that small tweak, drop the critical, and make that feed forward.
Feed forward. Yeah, absolutely. Feed forward. Because if you're just going to tell me how fat I was yesterday, I don't care. That's just hurtful. But if you're going to just tell me how, what I can do to be better tomorrow or today, that's helpful. I'm going to be more interested, more likely to act on it. But if it's just backward looking, then it's more hurtful than beneficial. And, as leaders, we should be looking to make every single encounter with our teams as positive as we can, to leave them more engaged afterwards than they were before we met with them. And if you think a critical feedback session is going to do that, then you're smoking crack. It's not going to happen. Think, feed forward. Feed forward. Our job is to nurture our teams, to grow them, and to put them into positions where they can be successful.
So motivation is the objective.
Correct.
Right. And talking about
it all sounds so simple, doesn't it?
Yes, but I think people don't practice it. That's
once you make that mindset shift, it changes your outlook on it. So it's a small change. Feed forward, not feedback, but the impact that will have when you're sharing the messages will be amazing. Now, there's always somebody who's going to be non-accepting of whatever you tell them, and that's just life. Whether you give them negative feedback or positive feedback, I don't care. I'll do it my own way. But that shouldn't stop us from being positive. Always be positive.
Got it. Got that. And, I just want to understand, because there's so much going about the virus, right? How do you think our way of life and work is now going to change when we come out of the crisis?
So I do think it's a major crisis, and I do think that we... Modi's done a great job of telling people right at the start, stay home, let's beat this early. I think that's good, clear, decisive leadership. I think what's going to happen, hopefully, is that, too many managers want people in the office Monday and Friday, 9 to 5 in front of them in order to see them doing the work. And I think one of the benefits of this might be that if people do a good job of home working during this 2 to 3 week period, and they can show that, 1, they can get online, 2, that they can do their job, and 3, actually do a good job, it might allow us to have more people doing more work remotely than in the office. And I think that will be a great thing, because it gives people more flexibility, more control over their day, less pollution. It makes people better off, more productive. I mean, Mumbai, how long does it take you to get to the office? And I worked in a job where it used to take me an hour to get there, an hour to get back. And when you factor in ironing a shirt, taking a shirt, I'm actually able to do, I've got 2 hours more work time if I want to put that to work, or 2 hours more free time if I decide I'm going to spend that time on myself. And I think there's a lot of time that's wasted on travel, a lot of cost that's wasted on getting ready to go to work. And I think it can be beneficial for both the company and the individual if we can do more teleworking. But that requires to have more leaders who are confident in their ability to lead people remotely.
Yeah, I think we're not prepared yet. Our mindset is not yet prepared to work.
As I said, I've just led my first project where 100% of the people, I've never met them. If you'd have told me to do that 5 years ago, I would have been like, what? We want to do what? If you'd told me that 15 years ago, I would have been like, no. I want everybody in this office where I can see them, where I can walk up to them and meet them. But we've got the tools. We've got a generation now who are much more adept with online collaboration than older generations, because we weren't brought up with the tools. So yeah, I think there's a big opportunity, and the companies that can master that are going to be the ones that are going to be more attractive to the high performers. And it's possible to create a high-performing team out of average to good people. It's a lot easier to make a high-performing team out of high-performing individuals.
Right.
If you've got a football team with the 11 best players in the world, they're going to be a high-performing team. It's just a question of how high-performing. So it's going to allow you to have a better quality of employee. And if you've got great leadership and great employees, then sky's the limit for what can be achieved.
But let's say if there is one person in the team that does not really align with the culture that you're trying to bring out into the workspace, then how do you address that as a leader?
So what's culture? Culture is the character of the organization. It's the values of the organization. It's the way the organization operates, and culture reflects leadership. So if people are not aligned with culture, is this because you're not doing a great job of demonstrating it, of letting people know what it is you want? And what I find is that, since I've been writing on leadership, so now I'm much more, when I'm doing things, I'm much more observant of cause and effect. Before I would just do it and I was oblivious to it, but now I'm much more observant of it. And there's a great graph called the diffusion of innovation, which is about who are the people that are the early adopters, the early movers, the middle movers, and then the laggards. And it's exactly the same with culture adoption. It's a bell curve. Whatever it is you want to do, there will always be somebody who wants to do it. And you've got to have different strategies for each of the sections. And, you create role models, and the role models are those people who are very early adopters. So you have to give them recognition for it and have different strategies for all of the people. But there's possibly going to be 5% of the people who are just not going to adapt to the culture. And at some point, you just have to decide whether it's necessary that they adapt. And if it's not, then maybe we don't worry about it. Or if it's critical, then we have to try harder, and if they won't change, then we have to let them go. Let them go be successful somewhere else.
Right.
But having said that, what I find is that if you create a culture where people can be successful, everybody wants to be part of that culture.
Right.
So you have to make the culture attractive. If the culture is one of hard work, weekend work, evening work, and no fun, no bonuses, no good pay, then you're going to find that a lot of people are going to reject that culture. There's got to be something in it for them, and they need to understand, what are they going to get out of this? And it might be success, it might be recognition. One of the projects I worked on, we had the majority of the project team worked weekends for 14 weekends in a row. Why did they do that? Because we were on a mission-critical project that 5 teams had failed, and once we started to be successful, everybody wanted to be involved for every minute of the success. So, and if somebody doesn't want to be successful, then we just have to say thanks, but no thanks. Clearly you're not enjoying this. I'd like you to work somewhere where you enjoy it. What can I do to facilitate that? I've had a lot of people say to me, I think I should leave. This is not for me. Okay, cool. What can I do to help you? But if you're making people successful, a lot of people will be very happy to go on that journey with you.
Right.
So, yeah? That makes sense?
That makes a lot of sense. It sums it all up.
But we have to be creative and think about these things. I mean, for the project that we just worked on, it was we were the 5th team. So when I did that, I said, look, this project is important because it's going to save it's costing the company a lot of money. We had to migrate servers off of a system that I wanted to close down. But the other thing that I used to motivate the team was, guys, 5 teams have failed. Imagine what will happen when we are the team that come in and deliver it. Just imagine the bragging rights that we'll have against other things. And this was a project that had visibility at the board within Fujitsu. So it was, guys, we have an opportunity to use this to really boost our reputation and credibility within the company. And people were like, yeah, great, let's do it. So we have to be creative. Look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, understand what people's fundamental needs are, and then feed as many of them as possible.
Exactly. And I think, we've already come to that stage where the first few stages of the Maslow's hierarchy, we've already conquered them. So now it's...
Yeah. Salaries conquered as meet their security, shelter, food and heat. That's covered. But that, salary is what gets people to come to work. Leadership, motivation, engagement, empowerment is what gets them to come to work and do a great job. If you just think people are going to turn up and do a great job, then, again, you're smoking crack. We've got to create that environment, that opportunity for them, show them how they can be successful. And when you do that, most people will go and do it. And if you can, as I say, if you can give them a higher purpose, let them know why it's important for them. And I did one project where we did the outsourcing and offshoring to India, and we didn't. It wasn't a staff. A headcount reduction. It was a movement of work so that we could free ourselves up. We moved the application support, and we did that so that we could move the people that were in the company onto the higher value work. So we're now doing this so that I can put you on the higher value work, which is going to give you a more valuable set of skills. It'll allow you to get paid better than the commodity work that we were doing, and it will put you in demand with other companies. And when you tell people that, they go, okay, yeah, I get that now. I get that. So this is better for me. Absolutely. So we've got to be creative and think about people. And this is why empathy is important. We've got to put ourselves into other people's shoes and ask the question, if I was on this, what would be important for me? And when we can do that, that allows us to make a much better, connection and impact on them for their motivation and involvement.
So you'd say that empathy is the most important quality that a leader should possess?
It's one of them, yes. I actually put a post on LinkedIn today that said, if you don't have empathy, you shouldn't be a leader. I think it is critical, but you also need to know how to be successful. It's like in sport. It's great that you're a really, really nice person, but if you don't know how to coach this sport, then you're just a nice person in charge of a losing team. There has to be some fundamentals of, understanding how to set up projects, how to deliver, how to coach and achieve success. You've got to have that as well, but you've also got to have the empathy to get people bought into it, enrolled, engaged, and then you'll be able to deliver the results.
Right.
The more empathy you've got, the more successful you will be, though, for certain.
That's wonderful, Gordon. The ideology behind it is, it's really, really, it's experiential learning, I think.
So I actually run a high performance leadership training. I was supposed to be doing it last week in Dubai, but for the coronavirus. And for that, there are 4 components. So the first part is about leading yourself, and that's about understanding, your own character, your own authenticity, motivations, your branding, and how you act and operate. And then the second, that's day one, about leading self. Day two is about leading teams. So that's more about empathy, engagement, motivation, and understanding how to create teams. And then day three is about delivery. How do we deliver projects? How do we run departments? The actual mechanics of delivering success. And what I find with a lot of leadership training, it covers the first 2 days, but it doesn't do that third day. And then for me, the fourth day of the training is about, and I had to do 4 or 5 days, and days 4 and 5 are then about culture, which is about how do you take all of the stuff we've covered on days 1, 2, and 3, and how do we make it sustainable, repeatable, and embed it into an organization so that as a leader, when you leave, it will carry on in your absence. Because culture is what guides people when the leader's not there to give them direction. So it's all about your legacy and what happens when you're no longer there. And this is critical for a leader. And if you don't know how to create culture, then it's all point in time. It's one initiative, another initiative. Culture is what allows you to, think about it holistically, embed it, make it repeatable, create an organization that's ready, willing to accept challenges and be successful. And once you've done it a few times and you've got that culture, it becomes so much easier. Everybody's just like, okay, what are we going to be successful in delivering now? The organization has a different mindset. They have a success mindset right from the start. And that, as leaders, is what we should be looking to create. Because if people think it's going to be a success right at the start, you've broken the back of it. You are in such an awesome position.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm passionate about this. I'm passionate about this stuff. I don't know if that comes up.
Yeah, absolutely. It's about having a purpose, being passionate about what you're doing. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's not difficult, but it requires us to do it every day and to be consistent about it. Consistently be asking yourself, what can I do to put my team in a position to be successful? What can I do to put my team in a position to be successful? And then the other thing you have to ask is, have they been successful today? And if they have, give them a pat on the back. If they haven't, ask them, what can I do to make you successful? It's a very simple process. There's a lot of complexity embedded within that, but fundamentally it's very simple.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. That is a wonderful ideology. And just to, I think, sum it up, if there's some advice you'd like to give to our viewers or some sound bites, what would that be?
Yeah. Exactly that. If you want to be a leader, focus on putting your people in a position to be successful. And don't forget, quite often they are an expert. And if you want to know what they need to be successful, ask them.
Right. Yeah, that's simple. That's really simple.
Yeah. If I want my wife to cook me something special, what do I need to buy from the shop in order for you to make that? And then if I go and provide that, then she can do it. If I don't do that, then if you don't have the tools or the ingredients, then it's going to be difficult to be successful. And if people can't tell you what they need, then they don't understand. And then we need to work with them to help create that understanding so they know what to ask for, and then we can give it to them.
Yeah, we're not mind readers.
No, absolutely.
It has to be a two-way communication.
And it's not a leader's job to know all the answers. It's a leader's job to know all the questions.
Right. That is deep.
It is, isn't it? But again, very, very simple. But a lot of times leaders get bogged down in the, I need to know all the answers. I need to know all the answers. No, you need to know all the questions and then you need to get them answered. And the more of them you can answer yourself, the better. But you don't have to be able to answer them all. You need to get them all answered.
Right. That is beautiful, Gordon. I think I've thoroughly enjoyed the interview because this helps me so much. I am also a first-time leader, and this kind of helps me get direction.
Yeah, the first time leader, it is difficult, and the other thing as well. What do you lead a team of people?
Yes,
and do you lead teams of teams?
Not teams of teams.
Yeah, so being a first time leader is difficult because it's just a step up. You're now, it's not what you can do with your hands, it's what they can do with their hands. And that's a difficult step to make. The next difficult step to make is when you're even one step further removed and you're managing teams of teams. Because now, when you manage a team, if you're teaching people to cook, you can want to cook, but you're managing the team of teams. You're not speaking to the people at the front line. You're one step removed, and that it's a slightly different skill set. The higher we go, the less critical our technical knowledge becomes because we're not in a position to impart it to the people on the front line. So we've got to know more about, organizations, setting people up to be successful, creating the environment, because we're one step removed. And then when you get to that next step removed, but there's a difference between captain on the field and being the manager off the field. It looks like it's a logical progression, but it's a completely different role. Because if you're not on the field, it's difficult to lead by example because you're not actually involved in the doing.
Right.
So this is why we need to be constantly learning. And when we get those promotions, look to learn, understand, find a mentor, get some guidance, read some books, go on training. And it's a fantastic journey, but every time you take that step back, that next step up, it is a different environment. And the things that made you successful as a team leader are not necessarily the things that will make you successful as a departmental manager or an organizational manager or a CEO. The skill sets become less and less connected to the actual day-to-day execution, if that makes sense.
It does. And I think it's going to help me a lot in my journey too. So thank you so much for that. I really, really appreciate your sharing your views with us. I've had a lovely time, Gordon. Like it's been phenomenal talking to you, and thanks so much for taking out the time. I really hope it's all safe and good there.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Gordon. And
all right. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.